including the happy little butterfly that we just got to see again. I love that little butterfly. Welcome to Parenting Beyond Belief, which is a production of the Atheist Community of Austin, an educational nonprofit dedicated to the separation of government and religion and the promotion of positive atheist culture. Wow. Parenting Beyond Belief is a show for folks who are raising free thinkers in a religious world. We discuss parenting, share our experiences, share stories, and take phone calls from parents who have questions, thoughts, or experiences about parenting in a secular way. Our regular show times are on the second and fourth Saturdays of each month at 1 p.m. Central Standard Time. If you're watching us on YouTube, please click that subscribe button. And right now, y'all, we have more than 700 subscribers. I'm pretty snazzed about that. And if you're listening to us on Spreaker, please click the little orange subscribe button. Make sure you know your colors. Here we go. And then if you like what we do, please consider becoming a patron on Patreon. I have to be careful about that because I say it wrong. We have some Patreon folks that we'll thank at the end. And let's get to our hosts today. We have a lot of people, all of them marvelous. We have Mandisa Thomas, who is audio only. Say hello, Mandisa.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the show today.
Yeah. Founder and president of Black Nonbelievers and the 2018 Unitarian Universalist Humanist Association Person of the Year. Which I just
sounded like a tongue twister.
It is. It's a long one. And I almost had to have Noelle help me with one of the words. I couldn't quite read it. All right. So it was a big word, universalist and all that. Kendall Hopkins, who is in Tacoma right now. Badass single mother and purveyor of true stories about life and mental health on her YouTube channel, Sapphic Chick. So check that out. And Noelle George, sitting next to me, who started the Facebook group Mothers Beyond Belief. It's very active. Join it if you're curious about that aspect of parenting, and is currently the executive director of Foundation Beyond Belief. And then there's me. I do this, and I am also a host on Godless Bitches. I'm going to say it anyway. And then we have a special guest, Marissa McCool. She is the author of 9 books and a speaker as well. She is the host of the Inciting Incident podcast, which has some obscene number of downloads. Like 30,000 per episode I read on something or other. Wow. It was like, holy cats. And manager of the Trans Podcaster Visibility Initiative, which is a bunch of badass. I love how Callie does that whole thing. I don't think I can quote it exactly, but badass trans folks trying to make a difference. And we have announcements that have to do with the ACA. The first one is that we are having a special Valentine's Day here in Austin, Texas, and it will be held on Thursday, and we'll have the Secular Sexuality show with Shelley, I don't want to pronounce it, Segal? I'm sorry, concert. If you don't know who she is, she's the person who wrote and sings the song for the Atheist Experience. I won't try to sing it for you. And so it's going to be a big evening. It's Valentine's Day, and it's going to be fun. So if you want to get tickets to that, there are plenty left. And go to bit.ly/secular sexuality. That is a mouthful. The ACA is proud to present our next Q&A guests, a godless engineer who joins us on Wednesday, the 30th of January on 2019 at 6 o'clock Central Standard Time, so that you can ask a godless engineer anything. Maybe we'll have some interesting tete-a-tetes about the towers falling down, that whole conspiracy bull crap. And the January ACA newsletter is out. If you want to see that, all you have to do is become a member of the ACA, which is, I think, $30 an hour, $30 an hour, $30 a year. It's really expensive because it's worth it. $30 a year. So you get the newsletter, and it's really slick, full of great articles. I always read it cover to cover. Good stuff. All right, on to parenting stuff. First, I want to talk about a little real quick thing because we have so much other stuff to do.
And we have calls already.
Hot dog. Okay. My friend Katie Malinsky did recently a parenting hack on how to get kids out of bed in the morning when it's so cold. It's hard enough to get kids out on time. We've all been there. Where are your shoes, etc. But when it's really cold and they don't want to get out of bed, she has some parenting hacks. And it's a webinar that has been already recorded, but you can watch it. And if you want to see that and other good stuff that she does, I often use her stuff on this show. It's katiemalinsky.com, KatieMalinski.com. She is thebomb.com. And then I'd like to just check in with everybody. How are you doing, Noelle?
I'm doing pretty good. I have had my voice going in and out for the last couple weeks, as you know. So if I sound a little hoarse, that's why. But I've been saving it for today because I have been so excited about what we're going to talk about and such a important stuff that we're going to cover today, I think. And pretty well from the parenting side as well. But we have been having some issues with lying. So my daughter is 7. For anyone who's watching that isn't familiar with that. So we have some interesting challenges that are happening right now. So that's always fun, always changing, always new stuff to figure out.
All right, and Noelle is here in Austin for 2 reasons this weekend. She's also here to receive a check from the ACA. She's the executive director for Foundation Beyond Belief. She'll receive a check that will help fund the Beyond Belief network that Foundation Beyond Belief runs. And if you don't know what that is, check out Foundation Beyond Belief. They do amazing things, and Noelle is the person who makes that whole place run beautifully. And Beyond Belief Network is something that you can get involved in as a secular humanist so that you can walk your talk. Mandisa, how are you doing, lady?
I'm not too bad. I actually was just in the studio last weekend, last Sunday.
I loved your hair. I'm sorry, I just made it stupid.
Thank you. I was hosting Talk Heathen with Jamie and the Atheist Experience with Tracy. And I spoke with the FACT group in San Antonio, the Free Thinkers Association of Central Texas, which was a very, very good experience. And so things are good. They're busy. Busy is always good. And, of course, always try to, develop and promote the events with Black non-believers. We have major events coming up this year, which I'm excited about. And but the kids are good. It's interesting. Miles, my youngest, said he wants to be a YouTuber. So he always wants me to give him a shout-out every time I'm on the air.
How cute.
Because he's on YouTube a lot, and he's signed up, and so he just wants me to put his name out there.
Right on.
I'm giving him a shout out on the air.
Right on. That is so cool.
He knows Mom's got the connections.
Yeah. And so, Kendall, how are things with you? You're kid free on this episode, which is a first.
Yep. That's what I was going to say is hopefully it'll be disaster-free. As usually, as everybody knows, I'm the one with a million things going on behind me. So yeah, I'm just enjoying this weekend with my lovely girlfriend, and I'm doing well.
All right. And Marissa, how about you?
It's very nice to be here. I have no complaints.
No complaints. That's good. I have a little life hack that I want to share with y'all. My son has his friends over to our house every Friday after school, and it's glorious for him. I love it, the social stuff that goes on. But they take over the whole damn house. We have a small house. And so since it's cold here, we happen to have one of those fire pits in the backyard. So I gathered a bunch of wood and said, here's how you make fire. Here's the hose. Have fun. And they were outside for like 2.5 hours. It was awesome. I got to have my house. Everybody was happy. So that's a little life hack for you there. And you know what? Kids, they figure things out. We can talk about how kids are good at making their own rules if you trust them a bit. So we've got a caller, and I'd like to go to that first. And this caller is from North Carolina. And what do I do if someone is able to convince my child if I am trustworthy? So someone is, wow, okay. Hey, Joseph, can you hear me?
Hi, can you hear me okay?
Yes, I can. You're on air with Noelle, Claire, Mandisa, Kendall, and Marissa. You got a gaggle over here. So,
I want to start out by saying thank you. I don't know if you would be, Claire was the only person that I talked to last time, and I was a little under the weather.
Okay. Yeah, I remember that.
But I wanted to just say thank you to Dale real quick, just because of how helpful he was communicating with me afterwards. Yeah. But I wanted to preface this question saying that as of right now, my child is still very young. And since the last time we talked, I was thinking a lot about what is it that I'm actually worried about when it comes to growing up or raising my child in a conservative religious community. And I think that my biggest fear along those lines, it's not my biggest fear by far, is what do I do if someone is able to convince my child that I'm not trustworthy or that I'm not moral? And I want to preface that saying that I'm not doing anything that would make my child think that, but I do know that being an atheist people tend to assume things about my trustworthiness and my morality and things like that. And if someone, whether it be a family member, whether it be someone that she just trusts in general, I guess it's kind of a two-part question. One is do you guys think that I'm being paranoid when I suggest that I'm worried that someone could sorry, I'm losing my words. Am I being paranoid if I'm worried that someone could convince my child that I am somebody that they shouldn't trust?
Right.
And two is, if someone is listening that's in that situation, or if I ever find myself in that situation, do you have any recommendations? The issue being that if your child doesn't trust you, it's kind of hard to tell them. Your credibility is poisoned at that point, so it's hard to convince them otherwise.
Okay, I'm going to channel Dale here for a little bit. I think he would say a couple of things. First of all, as a parent, Dale is a big believer in teaching your child to question everyone, even your own parent. So it can start with something silly, like they ask, how far is the moon? And you can say 4 feet. And they look at you like, come on. And then, so you begin with just like joshing sorts of things to get them to realize that you're fallible and you make mistakes too. The other thing is, from a developmental point of view, until your kid hits about 11 or 12-ish, they are going to hold you above all else. They're not going to question you. And I can tell from a personal experience, both of my parents were not the best parents, and anyone who told me anything that was disparaging about them, I didn't believe them. I believed that my parents were good people. And it wasn't until I was an adult that I went, oh, yeah. So you have that on your side.
Okay.
And as far as people who are trying to undermine what you're doing as a parent, gone. That to me is a deal breaker. I don't care if it's my mother, my aunt, my best friend, gone. That, for me. You can't have, if you can't trust someone with your child, then for me, they couldn't be in my life. My child is much too important. And there are a lot of folks who will do a lot of things that are not good for their kids, and I don't understand it. Being around someone who is not good for the child because you want to be around that person, I don't get that. So, all right, who's next?
I would like to say that no, I do not think that you're paranoid. I think it's normal as parents to worry about every little thing, but we also, so that we don't go insane, we have to step back and compartmentalize all of those worries and kind of realize if I play the what if game all day, every day, I'm going to drive myself nuts. So I don't think you're paranoid. I think you're a good parent for being worried about things.
I'd also add that you got to trust your kids a little more, you know. Don't think of them as so easily corruptible, because my kid is, especially my oldest, is 11, and he already has the mind of a skeptic. So anybody who's disparaging something or someone he cares about, he's automatically skeptical of them, not just taking in everything anyone says unquestioningly. So if you've instilled those values of think of what people are saying and question it if it sounds weird, which I assume you are, I think giving them the benefit of the doubt and credit that they would be able to spot that kind of behavior coming from someone else, I think that'll help too.
Yeah, and I will also channel Dale. Like I swear there's not been a single show I've done that I didn't say the same quote, is teach them how to think, not what to think. And so if you give them the tools of how to be skeptical, then you don't have to worry about them, because they'll come to the right conclusions on their own.
Yeah. Mandisa?
I don't think I can add much more than what has already been said by you, Claire, and you, Marissa. But I would also encourage, you know, like it is something that you worry about, especially with our position as atheists and non-believers. But always keeping an open line of communication with your child or children does help. And, you know, imparting the do as I say, not as I do method really does work. Continuing to talk to them and being honest with them, and it really does help a lot. It helps with your child being able to trust you with any information, and to also admit, you know, be able to admit when you don't know something or you might need to do some research on it. That way that they're not just trusting that adult or whoever it might try to say something about you as the parent.
Right on.
And yes, trusting your child is important too.
Yeah, Dale has suggested, Mandisa, I know you've heard this, Dale has suggested in the past that you go say, well, you know, I don't know, and go with them to look up the answer and find it together. And also, I think you've talked about this before, Mandisa, but that how you can prepare, you can front load for the people you're most concerned with. You can talk to them ahead of time and say, listen, I know you're religious, but this is what you can't talk about, what you can. Am I right? Did you talk about that? Or am I?
May or may not have said that, okay. But it's good advice, though.
Right. Okay. Joseph, were you trying to say something?
Oh, no, you're okay. I lost my thought.
Joseph, how old is your child?
She's 4, and she has autism, which makes the communication barrier a real challenge.
Yes.
And I'm hoping to work with that over the upcoming years. Okay. And I just, I know that last time when I brought that up, I know that that's a little bit outside of the it might be outside of the expertise that you guys have. And so I don't necessarily want to approach it from the perspective of a child on the spectrum.
Right.
Marissa actually
makes a lot of sense.
Marissa actually can speak to that, I think. If you have a question about that, she does have some experience in this.
Well, it's, you know, when the communication barrier is so strong, it does make it very challenging to establish good communication. But it's not impossible, and I've learned a lot about that over the past year. My daughter was first diagnosed last year, so this is all, I mean, I'm a relatively new parent, and I'm even more new to all of this. And so establishing that communication has been a real challenge, but it's something that we're working very hard on. I guess I just, I don't know why I worry about someone, or why I worry so much about someone trying to poison her against me, so to speak. But it's, you know, I don't want somebody to convince her, for example, that the reason she has autism is because I didn't believe in God and God was punishing me by getting to her, or, you know, all of these awful sentiments that, you know, I hear stories about.
Yeah.
And so I'm trying to find good ways to get out in front of any of these challenges.
Right. I'd like to know what Marissa has to say about this, because when I'll just say that when it was my turn, I was going to say that when our children will trust who they have the most exposure to, especially when they're young. So if you are one of the people that your child is around the most, then your child, up until the point, like Claire said, when they're 11 or 12, will trust you. They'll know that they can trust you by that point. So if someone random comes in and tries to say this or that, your child is not going to believe them because they know you. And if you live by example, I think that's what Mandisa was talking about, was do as I say, not as I do, which is the opposite of what you're leading by example, you know. But
it's not how I was raised. I was kind of raised the opposite way, and it's always something that I promised myself I would do differently.
Right.
You know, when I know that you guys have talked a lot about spanking in the past, for example, and my father not so much, but my mother was one of those. You know, when I say jump, ask how high on the way up.
Yeah.
Type mentalities. And I love my mom. I don't want to disparage your mom. If you happen to ever listen to this, please know that I love you. But you know, she would, when I was younger, it was hard for me to trust her at times, because sometimes I felt like I was being spanked because she was angry, not because I had done something wrong.
Right.
That's a pretty awful feeling.
Right. Well, and, you know, Marissa, can you speak to, you know, challenges that in the situation that he's talking about, when, you know, are there issues with when the communication has a barrier like that, or, you know, what are the additional factors that Joseph should be aware of?
Well, Joseph, I am an autistic person, so keep that in mind when I say this. Try not to think of it as a barrier, because that implies something that's broken or something that's an obstacle. So,
no, I agree with that 100%.
So I'm a person who
and
does
real quick,
have
just to be fair, I'm pretty sure that I'm an autistic person too. I'm just now kind of realizing this, and I could be wrong. I'm trying to figure it out. I just wanted to put that out there real quick.
Sure. So if you think of it more like a maze, you know, you're not always going to know immediately the way to get through a maze. But just because you make an error or assume something is the wrong way and it isn't, it doesn't mean you're not going to get through the maze, and it doesn't mean you were wrong for trying something. With a child who is 4, you're going to have a little bit more difficulty, not because the child is broken or because they don't understand, but because they haven't developed the ability to describe the way they think quite as much as an adult can perceive it or work within it. But once you establish that, and once you know the way through that maze, so to speak, the fact that you can do it will automatically put you above anyone else who tries to communicate that. You know, just Kendall here can tell you, having spent some time with me as an autistic partner, like it's not an impediment. It's not difficult. It's just sometimes you just have to figure out the way to navigate it a little bit. But once you have it, it's practically effortless.
Yeah, and if you don't, I hope I don't come across as speaking over you, but as as your partner, I think what really makes our relationship work, and maybe the same with your other relationships, is we have very open dialogue about different things that are different about us. So, I'm not a person with autism, but I do have anxiety. And so, we're driving up to Pike Place yesterday, and Marissa tells me, hey, if I grab your arm like this, like, it's because I'm super overwhelmed and I need you to, rub my back and tell me it's okay and get me away from people. And, same thing. I said, okay, well, if I snap at you, I'm sorry. It's probably because I'm sensory overloaded with all of the people as well. And don't take it personally. And so it's when, maybe when your daughter is exhibiting different behaviors, you can ask her, like, hey, how are you feeling when you do this? Or, I mean, I know I have a 3-year-old son, so I know there's only so much that they can communicate at that age anyways.
What do you need?
Yeah. And what do you need is super important too.
Yeah, I've never been able to get an answer yet to how are you feeling. We're working on getting her to even express when something hurts, where it hurts, and trying to find, getting her to communicate with us in that level. And it's luckily the local school system has been really helpful in terms of helping us to get her resources and early intervention education and things like that, which I've noticed a lot since we figured it out and have gotten her into programs that she's really made some awesome strides. And I just, it's getting to a place where I can get her to tell me how she's feeling and what she thinks. I mean, she's honestly never even asked me a question. And I agree 100% that I don't see it as a disability or something that's wrong with her. In fact, one of the main reasons that I want to find out whether or not I'm on the spectrum is not so that it's not for me. It's so that I can, so that I can essentially the same. I came out as an atheist publicly because I wanted to help normalize the idea of atheism by showing people that there's good people out there that are atheists. And there's part of me that really wants to come out as someone on the spectrum because I want to help be that example of somebody that, was able to have relationships and have a family and show that it's not, that there's nothing wrong with me. There's nothing wrong with my daughter. It's just that they approach the way that they think, the way that they view the world around them a little bit differently. And I am trying to work on how to establish that communication with her. And actually there was something that I believe it was Mandisa said that really makes me feel a lot better. And that is that, as long as I'm continue to work hard and establish that line of communication, if I'm the one that establishes it, then I will be able to have that connection with her in a much more significant way than someone else. To be honest, my biggest fear would be somebody that would be related and close, like my mother-in-law, who she absolutely adores. She loves rocking in the rocking chair with my mother-in-law and singing songs with her, and it's actually really sweet to watch, and I love their relationship. But I also know that she's not the biggest fan of me because of her conservative and religious background. And it would be people like that she also trusts that would be my biggest fear, as someone that would try to, and I don't think that my mother-in-law would do something like that, at least not at this point. And if I ever get a hint that she is, like you said, as far as I'm concerned, I don't want her to be around her anymore, but I'm hoping it would never come to that. She's honestly a very sweet lady until she's not.
I can definitely relate to that. My mother,
so can I.
Yeah, my mother's very conservative. I wouldn't say very religious, but maybe like a religion supremacist. You know what I mean? Thinks that she's better than everybody else just for having a belief in God. And my 3-year-old is with her right now. And he also absolutely adores her. They are best friends. And she's a really good grandma, but she definitely undermines me at times. And, you know, the way I plan to combat that when he gets older and starts asking me questions like, oh, well, grandma says this. I think a good way to approach it would be, oh, well, what do you think? What do you think about that? And, you know, not really sway him either way. And if he asks for my opinion, I'll give it and leave it at that. Because, you know, the more afraid we are of that interaction happening and the more we push back, the more our children are going to go, you know, wait a minute, why are you having such a visceral reaction to this? So I think it's kind of cool to just, you know, sit back and ask questions and have him turn out however he's going to turn out. Well, I give him the tools of how I think he should think.
Yeah. And also, my kid's other parent probably thinks Fox News is too liberal.
Wow.
And there's me, who is atheist, polyamorous, transgender. You know, it's like I'm working against a pretty difficult system. But, you know, you said something that stood out to me, and that is that she doesn't ask questions. And I tend to frustrate people for the same reason, because that's not how I learn, and they take that as a sign of disinterest. But once she's able to communicate with you how she does learn about people and the way it works, you have a brand new way to relate and figure out how they process information. And you've just got to trust her, you know? It's...
I do. I don't want to... I know it might sound like I don't... I'm honestly, you know, in terms of my actual real fears that I have and things that cause me real anxiety, this is much lower on the list, in the sense that it's just higher on the list when you put it in the category of concerns of raising a child in a conservative community. I guess that's when it starts showing up high on the list, as opposed to encompassing, well, okay, what are you really afraid of in general? You know, to be honest, the more I reach out to the community around me, the less afraid of it I become. Because I'm relatively new. I moved here coming on 2 or 3 years ago now. And it's been kind of relieving to learn the community and it not, and instead of reinforcing my fear, it's actually quelling them a little bit. So that's actually been really helpful to learn that my community isn't as backwards as I had feared, I guess.
Right. You said you have really good resource people to help you with your daughter. I wonder if you can't talk to them about the concerns you have about your mother-in-law, and then they can say, for instance, I think given the development your child is undergoing and the stage she's at and so forth, that it's best that you don't talk to her about X, Y, and Z. And that way you can approach your mother-in-law and have it be the expert who's saying these things rather than you.
Well, the only issue I have with that is I'm nervous to come out as... I have come out as an atheist publicly to friends and family. I have not done that in the workplace or in any of the relationships that I have with the people that are, you know, like I have a local autism group that I meet with on a monthly basis, or we don't make it every month, but we try to.
Right. The atheism doesn't have to be a part of it. It's because religion, there are lots of pretty and nice and sweet things about it. For instance, they might say, this is what I imagine they'll say, that any story that could be interpreted as being violent or scary cannot be told to her, like Noah's Ark. It's supposed to be a sweet story. Are you kidding me? Everything dies. But sweet stories about Jesus loving you and that sort of thing, it's innocuous at that age. And she comes home and asks you about it, and you can say, I don't know, what do you think? Like Kendall said. But there are certain things that should be off the table for her to talk to your daughter about. And if you say it's the expert rather than you, it takes it off you. And it doesn't have to even have anything to do with being an atheist.
Well, I guess my concern is if that I was to go to this person that, and say that I'm worried that, there could be that a wedge like that could be created, that I think their first question would be why, and what reason would your daughter have to not trust you?
Oh, I don't think you have to go at it from that angle. You can say, my daughter hangs out with my mother-in-law quite a bit, and my mother-in-law is a very deeply religious person, and I think her intentions are good. But I'm a little concerned about my daughter's developmental ability to handle some of the harder stories in the Bible. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, or you could just say, and we have very different values, if you don't want to out yourself as an atheist.
Yeah, I'm okay with Christianity, and I'm okay with my mother-in-law talking about her Christianity and religion and God and all that stuff. I'm just a little afraid of some of the stories in the Bible or something like this. You don't have to out yourself. Does that make sense?
Okay.
Yeah, and also depending on what your situation is with your spouse or the other parent of your child, if this is your mother-in-law and that's their parent, then you can talk to them and try to get that person on the same page as to how you're going to deal with your mother-in-law. So it's not just to you who is setting these boundaries, but it's also that co-parent or that spouse.
Yeah, and we have, me and my wife have had some conversations about it. I don't know if we've actually formally sat down with my mother-in-law and said, please don't talk about this stuff, let us do that.
Or talk about what she can talk about. Tell all the lovely stories about Jesus, and you can talk about your religion, but hell is off the table. And scary things like...
I think that I do think that she is aware that it would make me uncomfortable for her to talk about Noah's Ark or hell or sin with my daughter. But I haven't actually said that specifically, and maybe I should.
So you have an ally there. That's wonderful. A lot of people who call don't have that allyship in their partner.
Yeah.
Well, I think that she kind of ends up being stuck in the middle a little bit.
Right.
In the sense that, her mother is the person she's closest to, other than me. She values her mom's opinion, and she feels like she gets stuck in the middle. She's not an atheist, but she's not a religious person either. She is my ally in the sense that she understands where I'm coming from, and she'll support me when it's reasonable. And so I am grateful for that, and I'm very fortunate to have her. But I try not to put her in the middle.
Yeah.
Because I don't want to stress the relationship that they have. Or I don't want to put unnecessary stress on the relationship that they have.
I wouldn't think of it as being put in the middle so much as just doing her job of taking the best care of her daughter. And I was so stuck in that place. And then a friend said to me, Claire, your family, your husband and children, that is your focus. That is the most important thing right now. Your parents should be secondary to that. And she was right. If it's especially hard, I'm sure, since you like your mother-in-law. My mother was not an easy person to be with. And in fact, at this point, I'm completely estranged from her. But
I'm sorry.
Well, it's a good thing. Oh, it's a good thing to be estranged from her. It was bad in terms of being raised by her, but right now it's good. But as a parent, learning to value your family more than your parents is one of those growing up steps. And I know Kendall has had to deal with this quite a bit, and I've dealt with this quite a bit. I don't know about, and Mandisa, you've dealt with this a lot.
Yeah.
So,
I was going to say, my husband, my mother-in-law is quite religious, and so I kind of feel like I can speak to that whole situation. And my husband is not an atheist. He was raised Catholic. I'm not really sure what he is because he doesn't really like to talk about religion, which is ironic because I love to talk about religion and I'm not religious. But
that's how we are as well.
Yeah.
She doesn't let me talk about it.
Yeah. So I know that we've had our challenges when it comes to finding a balance between, you know, what he was raised with and the traditions that he sometimes values. And he doesn't really go to church. So it's kind of this situation where I'm the super active one as an atheist, and he's kind of, I call him an apacatholic. He's like an apathetic Catholic. And so when before my daughter was born, we had talked about he wanted to baptize her. And I thought about it, and I was like, well, it's just it's harmless, it's a little water. But what I didn't want is to be promising that we were going to raise her in some specific religion. So the compromise that we came to was that, okay, we can baptize her, but I don't want her going to church before she can really understand what's happening. I don't want to say that we're going to raise her in anything specific. And so that was fine with my husband, and we knew that there would be some relatives that would be happy about the baptism, but we had so much trouble. I had so much trouble when I was trying to find a place to baptize her because we didn't go to church, and we didn't want to promise that we would raise her in whatever that was, so nobody wanted to baptize her. So at some point, I was so frustrated, and I finally realized, if this is that important to him, then he can do it. And so I said, if you want to do this, you go ahead and do this. And he never ended up doing it. But it's just kind of an example of a situation where we had to find that balance. And we've taken our daughter to a Unitarian church where they, have influences from lots of different religions, and I've tried to teach her that there are many religions out there. There are books that you can read if your daughter likes books. And, I think it's just a matter of you and your wife having a conversation and kind of saying, this is what we want to do. And then once you're on the same page, letting your mother-in-law know what her boundaries are. And then, as we're talking about this estranged parent or whatever, then whose job is it to communicate the boundaries to your mother-in-law, probably both of yours together? And then what are you going to do if she steps over those boundaries?
Thanks.
That was a long.
But it really summarized everything beautifully.
No, yeah, that was a great way to summarize it, to be honest.
Right on. Okay. Go ahead.
Yeah, before I go, would you guys be okay if I spoke about something that you guys had talked to in a previous episode? But I know I've talked for a while, so if you just want to let me go, you can.
I'm happy to hear. We're all happy to hear it.
I remember, I forget which episode it was, somebody had mentioned, the idea of people that'll often say, when you spank your children, it's okay if you don't spank them in anger and that it works better. And I just wanted to relay, my parents were both of those mentalities. One would get angry and spank us, and the other my father made sure that he was never angry, and he sat us down, and he would tell us exactly what we had done wrong. He was very clear and made sure that we understood it, and then he would spank us. And I wanted to just say real quick that to anyone that thinks that that's a good way to go about it, the reason that I decided that I wasn't going to do it that way long before I even knew about the research on it was that what stuck with me was the conversation he had with me before he spanked me, and that the spanking didn't actually accomplish anything in this scenario. It didn't drive the point home. I don't even remember the spanking as well as I remember the conversations that he would sit down and have with me before he spanked me. And that, it seems like it makes sense, but it honestly, it just isn't necessary. And I don't know why anyone would want to hit their kids if it's not necessary, is all I really wanted to say.
Beautiful.
Thank you.
Just
Thank
beautiful.
You,
we can all agree with that.
Yes, I think so.
For sure. Oh, my gosh.
But I really appreciate you guys taking the time to talk to me today.
Oh, absolutely.
Thank
we
you for
appreciate
calling
your
in.
call.
Yeah.
Call back.
You.
Let
us
us know how things are going.
Thank you so much.
All right.
Yep. Take care.
Take care, Joseph.
Take care.
All righty then. Oh, wow. That was great.
It was great.
Yeah.
There was a lot of topics to tackle there.
Yeah.
So much.
Yeah. Well, the last time he called, Dale and Janet and I were on, and he was feeling isolated because he had the autism piece and he had the atheist piece, and he didn't. So finding community was important, and Dale helped him find communities, because no matter where you are, no matter who you are, community is so important. We are social beasts, and we need that. It's not like nice. We need that. So you have to find it. And if you're having trouble finding it, especially if it has to do with atheism or free thinking, pretty soon the ACA is going to have a website up that will have resources for you. But until then, there's Unitarian Universalist churches, if you have nothing else. Meetup.com has, you put in free thinker, secular, atheist, agnostic. What other sorts of words can you throw in there that will...
Non-believer.
Non-believer, right. Non-religious. And there's probably something in your area, and if there isn't, you can start one, and it's not that hard. Actually, you can even contact Beyond Belief Network about starting a group to do things. That's what we were talking about earlier today.
Right. And our groups don't just do service events, they do all sorts of activities. So
all over the country.
We support them in doing more and better service events. But I did want to say, and it kind of ties into, I think, some things we were going to talk about today that build on what you said about community, because I think when you're part of a marginalized group, that community building is much more conscious and intentional. Like when you're not, it's kind of, you just get community. You find easily people that you have things in common with in that area, because you're not needing to seek out people that are also marginalized. And so that's why groups for marginalized people like Black non-believers and, for autistic mental health, sufferers, which I am, or any other kind of marginalized group, trans parenting, or, if your child has, something like that they're, they need community for, that it has to be more intentional. It has to be more, more of a process that you're aware of. So I think that's very important for kids too.
Right, absolutely. That social piece for the kids is super important. And if you're anywhere with your kids, finding community for your children is so important. Those friendships may not last. It doesn't matter. There's all sorts of social skills that they're learning, and they're learning, if nothing else, the importance of friendships and how to negotiate things and all sorts of good stuff.
And their worlds are so much kind of more, small or just focused than ours. And it's like, it's easy. I remember as a kid feeling so alone. I didn't have a great family environment either. And there were lots of reasons that I felt alone, but I think for kids, if there's anything that makes you different, it can increase that feeling of loneliness, of isolation. And so being able to be a kid and be around other kids who have that in common with you, whatever it is super important, whether it's atheism, whether, like I said, it's mental health, or whether it's, whatever. It's super important for kids.
Your group, your clan.
Yeah.
And if anybody out there has questions that have to do with secular parenting, give us a call, 512-686-0279. And until we get another call, I have something for us to talk about. It's something that I saw on Facebook, and I thought, wow, this is all good stuff for parenting. It's things queer culture teaches that straight culture doesn't. And it's all sorts of tolerance and loving things and just good humanities skills. So I wanted to go through these one by one. There's a bunch of them. We probably won't get through them all in the time we have. And all of us talk about them. So the first one is, you don't have to get married if you don't want to.
Yeah, I love
we've
that.
We've had at least 2 callers to the show women calling and saying, I don't want to have kids. Is that okay? Yeah. It's very
I remember the first thing I interjected was, yes, it is.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah, and these first two, the second one is you don't have to have kids if you don't want to. So the first two are kind of linked, you know, in that society pressures people, especially, you know, people that present as women to, you know, to do the thing, to get them married and to have the kids.
And get them married. Check that box off.
Yeah,
right?
get the married box. So
it's
and
true.
I'm a big advocate for people who don't want kids to not have them, because how many children are there with parents that didn't want them and then, you know, are mistreated as a result of it? You know, some people, they come into parenthood by accident or by chance or whatever it is, and they, you know, make the best of it and they become really good parents, but some of them don't, you know?
Yeah. If you don't want to get married, you don't have to. And it's not a life goal either. Now, I will say this as a scientist and an evolutionary biologist, it is important to have a partner of some sort. And that has to do with your mental health. It's been shown that the one thing most highly correlated with longevity is having a partner. So I know I've said this in the past before I learned this information, and I'm sure other people have heard it. Oh, don't worry about being single. Date yourself. Enjoy your freedom. No, the drive and need to find a partner is very real, and it is actually very important to your personal health. So dismissing it isn't helpful. Acknowledging that it is important, do that. It is very important. It influences longevity. How much more obvious can it be that it's important to our well-being? So, yeah, don't have to get married, but finding that partner. And it can just be somebody,
Yeah, and I mean, since we have poly folks on as hosts today, I think it would be like you're not talking about one person, right? Like a person could have multiple partners that they...
And it doesn't have to be a sexual partner. Right. For instance, my sister and I have promised each other that when we're the last two left, we're going to live together. So any sort of partner, someone who is your little clan to the end is super important.
It's funny that we're talking about you don't have to get married and you don't have to have kids. One of the first conversations that I had with my husband, which this isn't going to make me look like I follow through with things very well, and sometimes I don't, but I told him that I didn't want to get married and I didn't want to have kids. And now I'm married and I have a kid. And so I guess he's not he's actually a great listener, but I was going to say he's not a very good listener because he didn't listen. But you know, I think there is multiple you know, aspects to this. Like for me, I didn't want kids because, and I'm not saying everyone is this way, because some people just don't like it, they don't want kids. But for me, it was those expectations of the mother role. You know, it's like those where they say that. You know, oh, you're never yourself again after you have kids, or you give everything to your kids, or you know, and I would, but I don't, because I don't need to, you know, and I don't. I mean, if I needed to, of course I would give whatever I needed to my daughter, but I'm still me, you know. We're still individuals, and I think you know, those of us in a mother role do get that a lot, you know, that expectation that, you know, oh, you're not a person anymore, you're a mom, you know, or you're, you know, oh, what are your interests? You don't have any interests, you're a mom, you know. When I go to visit people, they don't ask me about my work, you know, like family, like more conservative family. I mean, they don't ask about my work, they don't ask about, you know, what's going on with me. They ask about my kid, you know, because that's, you know, that's my entire world, apparently. So I think that some people, and this was true for me, when I thought that I didn't want to have kids, it was mostly because I didn't want to be put in that you know, this has to be what you are when you're a mother, and that's how you can be a good mother, and that's it, box, you know. I wanted to keep myself.
DeJean?
Yeah.
Or something. I've got your daughter on my mind. Mandisa, did you want to say something?
Yeah. So yes. So when it comes to, I remember that my husband and I, we started defying those, expectations early because we had kids before we got married. I didn't necessarily want to get married either, just because we had children, or because we had a child at the time. Because my parents got married because my mother was pregnant with my older brother, and so it was like a shotgun wedding, and that tends to be all too common, and it was all too common. So we defied those expectations of just getting married just because we got pregnant, and we actually moved down to Atlanta once I had my daughter. And we moved as a family. I wasn't sure whether still wasn't sure whether we were going to get married or not. But I mean, eventually we did. And, it was all about, I am a true expectation or tradition breaker and an expectation defier, because I don't like.
Yes, you are.
Can we get an amen, everybody? I'm sorry, but
ramen.
Interesting about what the straight culture tends to promote is that it's good for men or males to have multiple partners, or it's expected for them to have multiple partners. But of course, women aren't supposed to want to do anything. We aren't supposed to still take time for ourselves. We aren't supposed to have our identity, like Noelle was saying. We're supposed to be just faithful and loyal to our partners and our children. We're not supposed to dare consider having other partners and to be independent at all. And so I think that, and of course, I like to defy that expectation too. And I think that is a very important distinction to make, because it is still very male dominated. And of course, the woman seems to have no rights whatsoever in that culture, or in that way of that way of thinking, which tends to be, yes, extremely of course, extremely closed-minded. It's extremely binary, and I'm probably not using that word right, but it's very insular in its thinking and its actions, and it's ridiculous there. But yes, trying to definitely navigate that and raising our children differently, has been actually very liberating. And for me, it takes a burden off, because the more we're comfortable with not having to adhere to those restrictions, it allows all of us that sense of, independence, and that way of finding ourselves and being comfortable with each other, as a family and as individuals.
Right. I will say this for listeners. I know at least two of you did a fantastic job of maintaining your personhood through the early years of having children. But for me to have children, I had to jump off my career track. If in academia, if you jump off, you're done. That's the end of it. And so I jumped off, and my whole life was the kids. And once they both got in school, I felt kind of lost. And I've talked to other women who've had that experience. You have to kind of rediscover what you're going to do. And I finally figured it out, and it's great because you get to have yet another career and do something else. But it's not always easy to keep that. And
I also kind of did that. Like, I don't know if I'm one of the ones you were referring to, or if you were referring to one of the others.
No, I thought you said you hung on to who you were. Or you managed
to. I did, but as far as the career path, I was working in oil and gas, and when I had my daughter, I quit oil and gas. It's kind of similar. Like, you can't, as an engineer, you can't really, if you take a while off, you can't go back. So, knowing that, I had to, I did hang on to my personhood, but I also had to redefine what that was on some level, because I couldn't, and being a sufferer of depression, which I talked about when I was on the show last time, just knowing that I couldn't do what I was doing. I couldn't work, 50-hour weeks as an engineer on a kind of a career track and do parenting in the way that I wanted either. And, my husband and I talked about me staying home, and I was in a position to be able to do that, and lucky to be in a position to be able to volunteer and turn that into some kind of career track at this point. But it was a battle. It's a struggle. Like, I just don't want anybody to think that, like, retaining your personhood is this, thing that you just do. Like,
yeah, you just guard it and it's good.
No, it's for me, it was a struggle every step of the way, step of the way to maintain a life outside of what the box that I was being put into by everyone, almost everyone. So, anyway, I want to hear what Kendall and Marissa have to say. I don't think we've heard from them in a little bit.
I'm pretty much in the thick of rediscovering who I am as a person and what path I want to follow. I got pregnant at 21 and like right before my 21st birthday. And I had been working in my career for, I'd say 3 years, and had finally, established myself in my community and was getting job offers left and right. Ended up, getting pregnant, and I've been a single parent since then. And, I just quit my job back in August. I've been unemployed ever since. And I'm looking for jobs, and every time I find something where I'm like, this would be perfect for me to further my career, I can't take it anymore because they're retail hours. I did loss prevention. And I can't work retail hours because if I do, I'm spending more money on childcare after daycare hours, and it doesn't end up being worth it. I lose time with my son. I lose more money. And so now I basically am like, cool, I pegged myself into this box of what I wanted to be and still want to be, and I can't do it anymore.
That's just what happened to me.
Yeah, if anybody out there doesn't
totally
believe in the gender wage gap, this is what we're talking about. Yeah, same job per job. Women are also paid less, but we get screwed because we are by whatever. We have to be the ones that raise the children, have the children. At the very least, there's that, and just that little bit
to be the ones to raise the children,
and
for
just
the most
that
part.
little bit of time, even if you're just taking off a few months or a couple months for the first bit of the baby's life and all that. It hurts their career. It definitely does. And for me, it ended my career.
Yeah.
It will end your career in certain careers.
Yeah.
Marissa?
Well, part of my experience, and I use this as a general observation, is that straight cisgender people are often not only encouraged to get married, but they're expected to. And they're often not only encouraged to have children, but expected to. And part of the consequence of that, once again, in my own personal experience, is I hear how people who fit that narrative refer to their narrative, how they refer to being married, the old ball and chain.
Oh, God.
Or, just all of those cliches that even like in the 2000s when, every straight male comedian had to talk about gay marriage, they would always say, gay people have the right to be as miserable as everybody else. And it's like, is that what you think of this? Like, why is this something to
You're
fight
doing it
for
wrong.
if it's making you so miserable?
Yeah.
And in my experience, it's like my friends Callie and Celeste, for instance, I've never seen them refer to each other that way.
No.
I've never seen them take each other as an inconvenience or as some kind of burden. And, I'm a transgender woman, and I'm married to a gay transgender man. So I don't exactly fit the normal idea of what a marriage is. But I think when you've had to fight for your right to be recognized even remotely as equally, or when you've had to just have your legitimacy questioned or your right to be something that anyone else can just walk into, you appreciate it that much more, and you value it in a way that someone who is just born into the universal default has never had to consider.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you for that, Marissa.
Yeah, there's a group on Facebook called "Why Get Married If You Hate Your Spouse So Much," where that's what they share on that Facebook group is all of those toxic, like almost toxic monogamy posts where it's just all, you know.
I love that.
Yeah.
God, they're doing it wrong. They're doing it wrong.
And,
you know?
You know, I told her yesterday, I've been publicly polyamorous for 3 years. And even still, someone messaged me to say, does your husband know you have a girlfriend? And I'm like, we're all in a group chat.
Yeah.
All of my partners not only know each other, but they talk to each other.
And
all
I
the
was
time.
the whole time I'm like sending pictures of Marissa in Seattle to all of them.
I think they might be aware.
Maybe.
Even this to me goes what you're talking about, the old ball and chain, that attitude. I saw it a lot when I was in the field in Texas. As an engineer, I had to go travel in the field and out into rural Texas. And me, like liberal, you know, young woman from Seattle, going out and then interacting with, you know, older rural male white Texans. And you know, it was really. I mean, it was horrible, but it was also enlightening because there was so much that I saw that gave me, you know, insight into what's going on, and the whole toxic masculinity. Like, this ties into it because it's not it's not, you know, manly to love your wife and to love being married. So all these guys are like, oh yeah, the old ball and chain, you know, oh, I'm married, it's horrible. Like, that is, to me, toxic masculinity. That is because, you know, you have to prove that, you know, you're not domesticated. You know, you have to prove that your wife's not in charge. Like all that kind of stuff. It feeds into exactly. Yeah, you're still, you know, it feeds into exactly what we're talking about here, which is that, you know, these guys have to prove that, you know, that they haven't been tamed yet because, you know.
Have you ever seen that guy's T-shirt that shows a straight, but a married couple at the altar and it just says game over? It's like, is that really how you feel about it? And if so, why are you trying to make sure the queers can't get in on this supposed amazing
if you hate us so much, let us get married.
You hate it so much, but you have to keep it sacred so that you can continue to hate it by yourselves.
Yeah, I honestly don't think it's real. I think it's just that, you know, you have to be manly enough. You have to fit into that.
It's a front.
It's a front that, you know, you can't show weakness. Like, that's part of you know, sexism that we experience. That, you know, young boys are not taught. You know, they're taught to hide their emotions, and they're taught to, you know, that they can't show weakness. That emotion is weak. That, you know, all the things that. We could talk about.
I have a story about the crying thing.
Oh.
When my son was little, maybe 6, something was making him cry, and we were with Nana and Papa, and Papa said, oh, you know, boys don't cry. And I just leaned back and I said, Papa, you are the most mushy person I know. I see you cry all the time, because he does get emotional and cry. And so I got to just push back right on that, and that was one of my proud parenting moments. I wanted big points on that one. But my son got to see that ugly stuff, and then I was like, that's just not right. And Papa had to acknowledge it, that's hogwash, and boys do cry.
Yeah, my dad says, rub some dirt in it, and so we deal with that on a different topic.
Oh gosh, that's awful.
Yeah. I mean, he says it kindly, you know, he'll be hugging him and patting him. It's okay, rub some dirt in it, but still the sentiment is there, right?
Yeah.
Yikes. Okay.
Well, and you also have the part of the culture, especially toward men, that raises them to be like, you can't have any kind of catharsis. You can't purge your emotions. You can't open up to anyone but your partner.
Yeah.
And, you know, you see this particularly in incel communities.
I was just going to connect it to that too.
Right. Where these people, you know, don't have partners and therefore feel like they can't express themselves to anybody, because that's where I feel the worst for men, is that they feel they can only express themselves to their partner, and because they don't have a partner, they don't have anywhere that's safe for them to express emotions of depression or loneliness or need, lest they be accused of being a faggot. You know, so
Oh
well,
my God.
and it actually relates to the whole the idea of like the friend zone, because oh man, there was a great post about it that I read and shared on Facebook. But essentially, because they're taught from a young age, you know, women are your place where you can be emotional. The way that we as women have friendships generally is we are emotion based. We talk about our problems, we vent to each other. Whereas with men, it's generally they have more of a superficial relationship with each other where, you know, and we're speaking like straight men, straight women, stuff like that. They're having these relationships where they're just doing things they like to do together, like shared interests, which is great. But that is why it hurts them so badly when they open themselves up to a woman and then she doesn't like him back, because they've put so much emotional labor into it, and it doesn't make it okay. The friend zone is not an okay thing to say, but it does make sense on that sort of a social basis, you know, in our behaviors.
All right.
But it seems like if that's your chance to let things out, if that's your one like opportunity, and it's like you think you're going to be able to, you know, do the thing that you've been holding in, then it's like there's so much on the line. I don't want to say it makes sense. It's not justified to get angry or whatever, but you know, just thinking
we can
about,
understand it. We can look back and say this makes sense, even if it's not right.
To understand the reaction, if that's what you think, then of course you're going to be angry. Of course you're going to, you know, behave because you have so much on the line, right?
To bring this back around,
so one-sided.
I'm sorry. Yes, to bring this back around to parenting, what this all says to me is that when you see something sexist, horrible, and people say, "Oh, I'm fighting for my daughter," I'm like, "What about your son?" I mean, this is just as important to the son, and teaching them how to be good human beings, so that you can not have this issue. Because what that is, women being the emotional ones and needing to be essentially the garbage can for somebody else's emotions because they can't dump them on anybody else. That just looks at women as a garbage can at one end and a vagina at the other. That just feels really, really ugly to me. Yeah. We're not there for people to just lean on when it's treating people to see the whole person and appreciate the whole person. That is a parent's job, if nothing else.
Definitely.
Right?
Yeah. Right, and to teach all kids how to manage their emotions in a healthy way, how to express them in a healthy way.
That emotions are fine and normal. Being angry is fine. Being sad is fine. It's part of being human. Sounds obvious, but you see it out in public, how people treat their kids when they have anger or whatever. It's a tough one. Mandy said we haven't heard from you for a while. What's going on?
Oh, I'm just listening.
All right.
You know, I think that that I was just agreeing, especially when it comes to women and moms being like the emotional dumping ground. It's unfair to us, but yet it's so interesting how we're not supposed to express ourselves, that the moment that we become tired of it, then we're just whining and complaining. And
we're
that
hysterical.
goes back to the whole old ball, the old ball and chain notion of being married to especially women, because what do we do all the time? We complain. You know, we nag, but, you know, there's so much put on us. There's so much of an expectation placed on us as women and as mothers that it becomes extremely frustrating. And it's like, well, that's not supposed to happen. You know, like, you know, the moment that the moment we say something or express it, it's like, well, what's wrong with you? You know, I think back to the movie The Color Purple. Have y'all seen The Color Purple?
Oh, yeah.
Who isn't familiar with it?
Read the book.
So
I'm not.
Read the book and seen the movie. Now that I think about it, yeah.
We'll work on that.
So,
Read a fucking book, Kendall.
So one of the themes that, interestingly enough, it actually described, you know, at least some sort of at least polygamy or polyamory to some extent, was when, you know, Suge and Celie were talking about Mr. and having sex with him. And I thought that was a great example of having honest communication, especially between women, and them having, you know, sexual relations with the same man. I was just awe-inspired by the honesty of that conversation between them, especially as Black women.
Right.
And also when it became time for, you know, when Celie stood up to him, you know, the first thing he said was, "Now what's wrong with you?" I mean, he put this woman through hell and back. You know, for lack of a better phrase, but yet all of a sudden there was something wrong with her because she got tired of it.
Yeah.
And how many of us go through that? You know, just on a regular basis. You know, of and me coming from, you know, the perspective of being a wife, being a mother, and being a wife to my husband who is sickly, and you know, and then also being in in a public, you know, I guess being in a public eye or being a public person, you know, I'm not supposed to have feelings at all. You know, and that's that sometimes that becomes very, very hard to navigate. And I think taking it back to our children, my boys and my children are old enough to understand that, you know, I have conversations with them. Hey, Mommy's having a bad day. I'm not feeling well. I'm going to go and lay down, or I'm going to go into my space. You know, like I'm feeling this way. You know, please don't bother me. And so now, and we started that early. We started that communication. Or when I noticed that there was something wrong with my boys, I would ask them, you know, what is going on, you know, whether if they needed something, then but, you know, giving them that time and space. And for us to have that time and space has been extremely important. And we do that in our household, you know, and I think it works pretty well. But, you know, just going back to define those notions and those expectations and, you know, those old adages about marriage and family and children, you know, just it's a good thing for us to, you know, really start exploring how we do this, especially as parents who are non-religious, who identify as atheist, humanist, secular, etc. It really is eye-opening, and it should be eye-opening to so many people how we parent, because they may find that we're not as different, you know, as many other parents, except that, you know, we are, you know, taking on those traditional notions and you know, redefining what it means to be good parents.
Right. And basing it on research and data. We have a caller. So shall we go to the call? Her name is Sarah, going through divorce, moved in with religious mother, looking for advice. All righty.
Uh-oh.
Yeah. Sarah, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Right on. You're on air with Noelle, Mandisa, Marissa, Kendall, and Claire. Did I get everybody? Okay.
Yes. Hi, Sarah.
You have a gaggle of people.
Hi.
Hi.
Hi, everybody.
Hey.
I hope there's not too much background noise. Hi.
Yeah.
So I'm calling because I'm going through a divorce. And
sorry.
Unfortunately, I didn't have a lot of options. In the state of South Carolina, you have to move out. You can't just say, I want a divorce, let's do this. They say, the law says that you have to be separated and not live in the same house for a year.
Holy cats.
Wow.
So, so even though both my husband and I are saying, yeah, let's get a divorce, I have to go live somewhere else. And this
just
is...
to be sure.
Oh, gosh.
Sorry?
Oh, I said just to be sure.
Well, it's sexist because it requires that that somebody find a place to live, and women are less likely to be able to find that because they tend to have fewer resources. So it's the men who want a divorce are going to have an advantage there, and the woman not so much. So go on. I that's just awful. That's awful.
Yeah. So I didn't have a lot of options. I'm a stay-at-home mother. I have 2 kids, 11 and 9. My 9-year-old is severely autistic, so I can't work. And I mean, I can go into the details, but basically I can't work. So, so I moved in with my mother. And this at first didn't seem like a problem, but then I realized that the whole religious thing, as she's gotten older, she's gotten more weird. Her epistemology is very skewed, and I'm trying to explain to her why I'm parenting the way I am, and she's butting heads against me. But at the same time, she would cry and say, I was such a terrible mother. So it's really odd. And this is going to be really sad to say, but I'm actually considering going back to my husband because of this.
Yeah. Oh, that's so hard. That sounds like
totally.
I mean,
yeah, I totally understand.
I didn't say this, but I'm going to say this. Can you just have the state think that you're still at your mother's?
Right. That's obviously something I would have to talk over with my husband.
Yeah.
He's usually kind of a stickler for the rules or whatever.
Yeah.
And also he works for the government. So it's kind of like, well, if something gets out, you know, like, for example, he's not opposed to smoking marijuana, for example. However, he won't do it because he thinks somehow they're going to find out. So
has he been affected by the shutdown?
No, he has not.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah, I'm not sure why, but yeah.
So in your situation specifically, like what would you like us to weigh in on?
Well, so we all know that basically I don't know if I can kind of get through to my mom that I should have the final say as my kid's parent. And I don't know if I could affect any compromise with her and be able to stay with her.
Right.
And it's difficult because, I mean, it's the typical, oh, your child's autistic, let's take him to Healing Hands, and, you know, God will heal him. And I'm trying to explain to her that doesn't work. And, So, yeah.
Oh boy.
Who would like to? Yeah. Okay, Kendall.
Yeah, I can relate.
Lost, so.
What, Sarah?
Well, I just feel kind of lost. Like, and I have friends to talk to, but they're all kind of like, well, we're here for you, and sorry you're having it. Like they're, I don't know, afraid to give me advice. They're, you know, they want to be supportive, but they don't want to give advice.
Okay.
So, I don't know.
Yeah. Okay. It sounds like a really, really challenging situation. Like, you know, divorce, you've got multiple challenging things all happening at once, and then the religion factor thrown in there. So, Kendall, what were you, I think you were going to start.
Yeah, I just, I can definitely relate. My mother is not only religious, but she's also a narcissist. And I'm a single mom. There have been several times where I have had to move back home with her, with my son during transition periods, or, you know, I needed to save up money or whatever it was. And we definitely butt heads. And we still, you know, she's constantly questioning me as a mother and making decisions for me, basically, as a parent. And I have to regularly establish I am an adult, you know, I am a mother. I am my son's mother. You don't have a say in this. And I think ultimately what it came down to, and I was fortunate enough to be able to go back to work the last time I lived with her, and that just motivated me even more because it got so bad day after day. I was like, I need out of here. And I wasn't ready. I crashed and burned because I was not ready to move out. I didn't have a savings. I didn't have the money I needed, or wasn't making the money I needed to cover my rent. But I had to, for the well-being of myself and my son. And I think that what ultimately ends up helping with our situation, and sometimes, you know, it falls back, and as a single mom, I do have to rely on my mom a lot because I don't have really anybody else who's willing to give me free childcare when I need to go do something, or, you know, if I'm in a financial crisis, you know, my parents I'm lucky enough to have them be able to help me with some things. And I generally think that she takes me giving her ultimatums pretty seriously. So I don't know what your relationship with your mom is, but if that is something you can do where you say, listen, these are the ground rules, you know, for my family. And if that's not something you can respect, these are deal breakers for me. And you will not have a relationship with your grandchild or with me. And that's super hard to do. It's so much easier said than done. And I don't know, maybe you have had these conversations, but I think it's definitely necessary to you have to let these people know that they do have something to lose. They cannot treat you however they want to treat you.
And also parents, in my experience, once again, because I've had to come out as more than just one thing.
As everything.
As more than just atheists to my parents. Parents tend to project their fears and feelings about you and blame the children for it. So, you know, coming out as polyamorous to me, for my mom, was like, well, we're just worried about how the kids are going to handle it. It's like, no, you're not. What, my kids have an extra parent around? Oh no, the horror.
Someone else who loves them? Oh my goodness.
Right. Or when, you know, we came out as transgender, my parents were like, well, we're just worried about the kids. It's like, my kids knew 6 months before you did. They don't care. We explained to them that we're transgender, and they were like, okay, what's for lunch? Like,
yeah.
It's like, if you were actually worried about the kids, then you would know they're fine. It's you who has the problem.
Right. And even now, my mom just decided on her own that she was going to keep my son for an additional night. I was planning on having him here with us today because I don't know. Do you really know this person? I don't really think Silas should be around a stranger. And
Silas might catch the trans.
Yeah, but I mean, why? You know, first of all, I am his mother. I will make that judgment call. And second of all, I would never put my child in a position that I knew he wasn't safe in.
It's so insulting.
It is so insulting. Well, it's insulting to my judgment.
That's
it's not
what I
about
meant.
you. And it's
no, that's what I meant.
Yeah. Yeah.
She thinks so little of your judgment to think that you would bring someone potentially harmful into your house with the love of your life.
Yeah. So it's super frustrating. I definitely 100% relate. She just texted me today. She's like, I go, when are you dropping him off? She goes, oh, he wants to stay another night. I'm like, oh, he wants to? Okay.
Oh, boy. Sarah,
just something to bring to you real quick. I have given my mother an ultimatum before. Years ago, when the kids were young, my mom had a problem with prescription pills, and I told her she wasn't welcome.
So, and you know, it is super hard because in a position maybe like yours, but definitely like mine, I need my mom in a lot of cases. And so we aren't always in positions to break those relationships apart if we want to, you know?
Right. I think, Sarah, you said you have friends that you can talk to and stuff, but I don't know if where you are, if there is a local secular community that you can, link up with that maybe somebody else has been through a parent pushing religious groups on religious beliefs on your kids, but then also counseling. I don't know if you can get counseling or talk to a counselor about it, but that, especially if it sounds like if your parent is difficult to deal with or, you said her thought processes were kind of, I don't remember exactly what you said. The epistemology was kind of out there. So, I think the secular community can help with as far as the religion part, and the counseling can help as far as like communication techniques, being clear about boundaries and things like that. So those are definitely good resources that might be able to help.
Yeah, can your husband step in at all? I know it's your mother, but how can he help in this? Is there any way?
I don't know.
Taking the kids on the weekend or something to give you a break?
I forgot to mention, I'm in Florida and my husband is in South Carolina.
Yikes. Okay.
So you had to go, he stayed in your house and you had to move?
Mm-hmm. Yes, because financially we couldn't just get him an apartment.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, so mother's house is free.
It was, yeah.
Okay.
It's easier for him to not move in with his parents or whatever, maybe.
Well, if he moved in with his parents, he'd have to go to Portland, Oregon. And,
okay.
That he would lose his job.
Right.
So.
Right. Yeah.
Well, I know Mandisa's experience with that, too, if she wants to chime in.
Oh, yeah, Mandisa.
Hush, Mom. Now it's my kid in the background. Yes, it is, though. He just asked, was there alcohol in the fridge? And I just told him yes. I would say that it can be, wow. I am very grateful for my in-laws because they are extremely helpful when it comes to the kids. I mean, they only really see them in the summertime, but I would say that they are extremely supportive of us and helpful. I would just ask, like, how far are your future ex-in-laws from you? I mean, I'm not sure if the situation would be any more helpful with them, or if there would be any much more different than it would be with your mother.
Yeah,
but it would definitely. If you and your husband are still, I guess, amicable, then that's going to be very, very important, even after the divorce. Mm-hmm. That if y'all are still on friendly terms, and that y'all are good co-parents, that's going to make a huge difference. Because, when that time comes that you don't have to rely on your mom anymore, then you'll be able to at least have that good co-parent relationship with him.
Mm-hmm. And your in-laws.
Okay.
I mean, moving in with your in-laws as a possible
Right.
gap.
Well, I get along with his mother a lot better than I get along with my mother.
Okay,
That
yeah,
might be.
We're on to
you're out.
something.
Don't be afraid to utilize that resource. Then.
Right.
I mean,
they're her grandkids too.
Yeah.
I
I don't
never
know.
even considered that. But, I mean, that would mean me moving to Oregon.
Yeah. That's a big change. I mean, I don't know if there's.
Yeah.
It
And
just
sounds
it
like
seems
the
like
kids have already gone through one move, so I
Yeah.
totally get it out of chaos, you know.
yeah, and I don't know if you feel like your mother would be open to you conversations with you about what what's appropriate and what's not appropriate. I think that's probably the best way to go if you can figure out a way to get through to her. I don't know how difficult she is to.
She doesn't take criticism well. She's also a narcissist.
Right on. Oh, I've
Hey,
been
are
there.
you my long lost sister?
Yeah. No, I'm estranged from my mother, so I get that.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I know that moving would be hard on the kids, but part of taking care of the kids is taking care of you.
Yeah.
And if you're going to have big problems because you're staying with your mom, and I would personally, if I were, my mother-in-law, they are religious on a mitochondrial level, but I would take them way over my mother to live with. I would probably sooner be homeless than live with my mother, and I mean that quite literally.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And it
Here,
kind
I'm
of
right
depends
there with
too-
you, Claire.
Yeah.
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 It depends to the level in which she is affecting your children and your relationship with your children. I had like a straw that broke the camel's back moment where I saw behavior and I said, nope, this is not how this is going to go down. Basically, like my mom called me an idiot to my son. And I said, what did you just say to my son? We're leaving. Because I'm not raising a kid who is going to grow up and go, well, grandma says you're an idiot, And so it depends on what level is it affecting you. Is she just driving you crazy, but she's not going to really have a long-term impact and you can just stick it out? It depends. There's so many different factors that go along with it.
Narcissists can have such a horrible impact on kids.
I'm not sure. She did something the other day, and I don't usually get angry very quickly, but in this instant I did.
Go Mama Bear.
So my son was about to make some toast, and I said, "Oh, you're asking to make toast, And I just was reflecting out loud, and I said, "Well, he didn't used to ask. He used to just get the toast, and him being autistic is very important to foster independence. Very important to his development. But my mom, she, like, under her breath, she said, "Oh, good." And I'm like, what did you say? And she said, "Oh, good." And she gave me a sassy smile. And I said, well, that's not good because he needs independence. And she said, well, I would feel better if he got his violence under control before he used a toaster.
Oh, Lordy.
Hey, not about her.
Oh, wow.
Oh, gosh. I'm sure, Kendall, you've been there. Mandisa, I have been there. My mother said outrageous things to my children, and it was a deal breaker for me. That's when my mama bear would come out.
Yeah.
Grandparents think that they have certain rights over children or their children or over us. And it's like, well, it's not about you.
Yeah.
It isn't it isn't even about me all the time.
I think that in a lot of cases, they can't let go of their parent role over us. They cannot see us as now this is the new generation. This is my family. We're still their kids in their eyes. And so they think that since they have control over us still, that by proxy, they have it over our children.
That's especially true with narcissists.
Right.
My Elise was explicit that I was hers. she would say this, and she was never going to let me go. And so she felt ownership over me and my children and my sister's children. And my sister's son is autistic, and the damage that she did to the autistic son grandson, because he was different, that alone, I will never forgive her. I get it. I get it. The narcissist is a really tough road to hoe.
I think it's difficult to go from the parent-child relationship to the adult relationship.
Right.
And for me and my mom, she's not a narcissist, but we did have challenges when I was growing up, and we had to do that, and it required distance. It required distance, and it required a lot of processing and communication on both of our parts, and it wouldn't have happened if she wasn't willing to take the steps that she needed to take to acknowledge the things that she did and how they affected me and my brother. And if she hadn't have been able to do that, I don't think we would have been able to repair our relationship, because it's critical that a parent who has a contentious relationship with a child, or I don't want to describe my specific relationship. I want to be more general, but also not diminish it to contentious when we have some more serious issues. But I think it's so important for them to be able to acknowledge and apologize, and for the child to know that, they feel bad about their actions and the way that they impacted that child growing up. So I can imagine that with a narcissist,
that's never going to happen.
It's
with
never
going
to happen.
And
and
that's what sucks, right? Is
so sorry to report that is correct. My mother does not apologize.
No.
And
right. And the shitty thing about narcissists too is that they generally have something to offer that we need, right? Like help, or sometimes my mom can be a riot, and I love drinking with her and having a good time and talking. And then she's the worst person I've ever met in my life the next second. Because if they were all bad, there would be no draw for us to them. But they all have something in them that is either attractive or appealing or necessary for us. And that's what makes it hurt more, right?
And that's kind of why I wanted to talk about that, is just that it requires a lot of stuff. And if you're getting into that field of the narcissism or whatever, like, I just want to make sure that the tie-in is evident, that's what it takes to move into that type of a relationship. And there's just no way.
If a person is incapable of it, then...
Right. Narcissists are perfect, so why would they ever apologize?
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
I hope this helped some, Sarah.
Yeah.
If nothing else, you're not alone.
Yeah.
And we would love to hear back from you.
Yeah. Give us a call from the Pacific Northwest. When you move out there, maybe you could visit Kendall. She lives out there.
Yeah, please do.
Right on. We wish you the very best of luck.
Yeah. Good luck, Sarah.
Right.
Thank you for calling.
Thank you.
Thank you for calling.
Thank you.
Good care. Bye.
Bye-bye.
All righty, gang. We are out of time. We are actually over time. Did anybody want to say one last little thing before we wrap this up?
Those were both great calls.
Yep.
Thank you, all of our guests, for being here today.
Yeah.
It was a great show.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you so much for being here, Marissa. It was wonderful to have your perspective, and I hope you'll come back.
It was, and I do believe they're showing the email address. Sarah, if you want to email us and to continue the conversation, if you think of anything that you may have wanted to ask but we didn't get to, same with all the other watchers and listeners out there, and just email us and
or call us next show, which is in 2 weeks. Who's going to be hosting then? I can't remember. Is it me and
you and Dale,
and Janet Heimlich? Yeah,
Janet. Okay.
So that'll be good.
I mean, I think today, because we had so many different perspectives, it was why we had such a good. I feel like we had a really good interaction that with all of us that touched on a lot of different things. I would like to go through the list.
Yeah, we're going to keep on with the list at another.
I don't know,
show.
Marissa, if you would come back and we can talk more about the list, or
and the list has been posted on the Facebook group that includes Parenting Beyond Belief. It's oh gosh,
ACA
the name of
Private Productions, I think it is what it's called, or ACA Productions Private, something like that.
Yes, ACA. Private.
It's
damn
fine.
It's got somewhere in there. Anywho, check that out. It's there, and we'll also talk about it longer. I would also like to thank Gunther, the Colonel, for doing our little butterfly deal, which I love so much. And thank you to the folks on the other side of the wall over there who do so much to make this very, very easy for us to do.
ACA Productions Private Discussion Group.
Yes.
There we go.
Thank you. That's what it was.
I'm happy to come back on anytime.
Right? Oh, great. And
Mandisa.
We want to say special thank you to you because we can't see you, and make sure you know that we love you and appreciate you.
And did you have any closing thoughts?
Not that hasn't already been expressed. Thank you all very much for having me, and I thank you, Marissa, for being the guest host this time. And
thank you,
I look forward to the next one.
Right on,
Mandisa. You know, if you're involved, I'm there.
Right on. We have some Patreon people to thank. There's Jonathan and Eric at the butterfly level, and Janet Reyes, the amazing, and Maestro 256 at the caterpillar level. I love that one. And let's see, who else do we need to thank? Thank you to the viewer. Thank you for spending some time with us. We know that parenting is hard, and we hope that what we have told you today and the advice that we've given has helped you in some small way. And now I think it's time for you to go hug your kid. Bye.
Bye.